Okay, so welcome everyone to the RSSC Reinvent South Stockton Coalition and Amelia and Adams, and also the Visionary Home Builders Superintendent Community Listening Session. My name is Benjamin Henderson. I am the Senior Project Cradle to Career Coordinator for Reinvent South Stockton. My role is basically to have a positive impact from K through 12 education, work with different community stakeholders around these 4 educational issues. So that's what I do. To start off here, we will kind of go into the purpose of the listening session here. So the purpose is to gain more of the community's input on what you would like to see in your next superintendent. And we plan to summarize this input for the SUSD Board of Trustees and also for the search firm here, which is McPherson and Jacobsen. I said that correct?
That's correct. Mm-hmm.
All right. And so would you like to actually give some history on the superintendent?
Yeah.
On with that?
The board contracted with McPherson and Jacobsen, I think back in February to put together a process for selecting their next superintendent. We were very fortunate to be selected. And I think part of the reason is that we really emphasize stakeholder input. So we spent probably about the first half of this process interviewing. We had a survey out there. We actually had 600 respondents about 4 questions. And the 4 questions were, what are good things about the community? What are good things about the school district? What are the issues that are there that the next superintendent should know about? And then the question you're asking tonight, what are the skills, attributes, and characteristics you'd like to see in your next superintendent? That all has been published and is on the district website. So if anybody wants to access that, there's an executive summary in the beginning of it. But I think it's about 170 pages of testimony and people writing in. But we're always open to input from all corners and all people about what they're looking for in a superintendent. I know this board's very committed to it. The process is moving along. The board met last night to decide who to interview. We had 24 people apply for the position, and we're interviewing 5 people on Friday and Saturday. The Board of Education has determined to have a stakeholder panel of people to also interview the candidates. This is all a confidential process. But it's very important that we, hear how everybody kind of sees these candidates and how the stakeholders view them. So that's an important part of our process as well, to have stakeholders. And stakeholders are people from the community, their parents, their community leaders. They are employees in the district, teachers, classified employees, administrators, and students. We have a student or 2 on that as well. So they participate and they give direct input to the board about both the strengths and the concerns of each candidate. So I don't know, Kennetha has been the chair of the subcommittee for the board. It's really been great working with her and her subcommittee. That's been really a nice feature of this whole thing about how dedicated the board's been to a good process. Is there anything, Kennetha, that I missed that you think we should emphasize about the current process?
I think you pretty much said it all. I think the highlight is really ensuring that when we're selecting a superintendent, that we do have the stakeholder input. I think that was a big part of what we wanted to do, and also have a lot of accountability around the work, lifting up the superintendent search. So a lot of great work has been going on. And with McPherson and Jacobsen, Trustee Sofia Colon, who's on as well, she is a part of the stakeholder superintendent search subcommittee as well. So,
yeah. Hi, Sophia. I missed you there. How are you? I see you now.
Hey, everyone. I'm doing good. Thank you. Just here to listen. I'm so excited just to get more and more feedback. Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, I did drop the report in the chat, so if anybody wanted to review it, so it's in the chat for you all.
Okay, great. That was a really great overview. I really appreciate that from you both. And I'll just go into a little bit about the role of the superintendent. Basically, superintendents are managers who oversee the day-to-day operations of a school district. They're also leaders, basically try to improve student achievements, and they take on whatever role the district and students need them to fulfill. They work with the Board of Trustees and build relationships with the community. Superintendent is considered the primary instructional leader for a school district, but their work is intertwined and dependent upon principals, teachers, support staff. And so does anyone have any questions or anyone like to add anything about the role of the superintendent?
I think that's a good description.
Okay, great. Thank you. And also too, you can find on the Stockton Unified School District website, you can find information on the superintendent search. They actually have a link that goes through the calendar, the stakeholder reports. It's all there. I can even drop that link in the chat if you'd like. And so that can provide more information on the whole process if you'd like to see the actual documents. Okay, and so now we will get into the questions here. But before I get into the questions, are we all clear on the role of the superintendent, where everything's at in the process? Anyone have any questions or anything they'd like to add? Okay, all right. So our first question is, what would you like for the next superintendent to understand about the Stockton Unified School District and the Stockton community? And so this is open to everyone, so please provide your input. And the question is in the chat as well. Anybody have any thoughts on that question?
I couldn't see the question again in the chat. Can you say it one more time for me? I'm sorry.
There we go. Yes.
Oh, there it is.
Yes. What would you like for the next superintendent to understand about the Stockton Unified School District and the Stockton community?
Well, I can say that I think that who's ever going to come into this role needs to know that we are proud communities, and we are communities that work hard to just survive day by day. And it's something that, you know, and regardless of where we live, whether we're in housing, visionary, you know, if we're in low income, regardless of where we live, we are all only one paycheck away, one check away from, you know, unfortunately, the streets. And we do have a lot of students on the streets. So I think our superintendent's going to need to be aware of the many different backgrounds and the many ways of living that we all have, and also just know that we struggle day by day, and we need a lot of compassion and understanding and vision.
Great. Thank you for that.
Hey, Ben, may I add something?
Yes, most definitely.
Sure. Hi, I'm Jason Weiner. I'm a colleague of Ben's at reInvent South Stockton. And I'll just say, as someone who's worked in the community for a few years now, I'd say it would be important, whether the superintendent comes from the outside or inside the district, to understand that folks in South Stockton have a distrust of institutions institutions and leaders
Yeah.
based on real history, right? Like they've seen what's happened at hospitals and at the city and at school districts, and how it does and doesn't benefit them. And so it's incredibly important for the school district to focus on building trust, rebuilding trust with the community, and making sure that parents and students and teachers can have some faith in at least their schools, even if they don't in other kinds of institutions.
And to go along with that, Jason, we also need to see, as hard as it can be, and as tough as that the conversation is going to be, we need to see transparency, because what we just watched as the implosion of what happened with the board previously, and why we are where we are now, and why there is so much just pulling at each other within the district. We need to see much more transparency and a whole lot more communication. We need to see the superintendent out in the communities, being part of us, talking to us. You know, you don't just have to sit on the dais to get to know us. You can actually come to an event and meet the communities, hold events to meet the communities. Because there's a whole lot more to the South Stockton community than just the schools, right? I mean, we are so much more than just the schools. And yeah, so transparency, a lot of communication.
Great responses there.
Yeah.
Yes, does anyone like to add anything else to that, or any other thoughts on that question? Okay. All right, well, I will move on to the next question here. I'll put it in the chat, which is, what are some important issues do you think the Stockton Unified School District is facing right now?
Oh my gosh, I can go.
Okay.
I can go. So many issues. Like Jason said, the lack of trust, the lack of communication, the lack of transparency, the almost, some of the trustees, and we all know that I do mean some, there are a few trustees, their lack of ability to engage with the community. And the fact that we have such a high turnover rate with the superintendents, I mean, this is getting a little silly. It's out of control. We think we have one that's, you know, doing right, and they get pushed out because they're allowing outside tabloid type entities to come in and just completely split everybody. And I don't think a lot of people understand, but what the board and the trustees are feeling with that split, thanks to, I call it 80s Inquirer tabloid type stuff. That doesn't only just affect the trustees and that board. That affects all of us. Because, you know, there are some of us who are like, there are some of us who just, we don't put an ounce of thought into what certain things that some Facebook pages say, and I know we all know which one I'm talking about. But there are others who just swear by them. And so we're being torn apart because we're watching our board be torn apart. And then if us as adults are doing it, our kids are feeling, this is a serious trickle down effect. And it's probably one of the biggest issues, is that this board needs to come together and work together, because that superintendent needs to be able to pull all of our trustees together. And remember, they're there for our kids. They're there to make sure that our kids have the proper, learning devices, the proper materials to learn, that they're safe within their school. And I'm going to get off my soapbox. Thank you.
Really appreciate your input there.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, does anyone else have anything they'd like to add to that question, or anything they'd like to go off from that question? Any other thoughts for that?
I'll go ahead. I got permission from one of the youth protectors that I'm sitting here with. Well, the only one here. His name's Kamari Myers. And like we were kind of just talking, and I was asking him what he thinks like about the questions, and what he thinks like the main problem is within like Stockton Unified School District. I mean, one word like kind of just popped up for him, and it was like endangerment. And like for me, like that's something like prominent that pops up anytime I talk to a kid within Stockton Unified School District or a youth, just that feeling of safety or the lack thereof within their classrooms, with their educators and in that space. And I just wanted to kind of highlight that and just to kind of put that into the space as to what he thinks in just one word, exactly like what needs to happen within Stockton Unified School District, and at least what he sees, so just wanted to highlight that, and thank you for the space.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, and just to piggyback off of what Omar and Kamari were mentioning, what we're hearing from our youth usually centers around like a lack of mental health spaces, especially since COVID really popped off. There really is an intense need from a lot of our most marginalized students to seek safe spaces, to have to feel safe within their school district. But because of some of the like narratives centered around the district right now, and what we look at in our leadership, they don't have that much faith in its leaders to be able to provide those necessary resources. So there's a lack of trust just being built there, just because of, like, again, this mental health strain that COVID really put down, but things that even existed before the pandemic really were exacerbated by these new narratives. We think one of the ways that can really be addressed is, again, having much more transparent processes, being out in the community, communicating these things, and then offering spaces for especially youth to inform leadership on how they can do better. Without that, then we're not really building trust with our communities, and they won't feel that there's a safe enough space for them to go to, that they can't trust their leaders to go to them and help them find those spaces. So.
Okay, great. I really appreciate everyone's great input on this. Does anyone else have anything they'd like to add? Once again, the questions in the chat. Questions: what are some issues do you think the Stockton Unified School District is facing right now? Okay.
Hi, this is Brenda Francis, and I'm an SUSD employee, but also here as a community member as well. I appreciate everything that has been said. It's so right on. The only thing I would probably specifically speak to is the lack of sufficient student performance, academic performance, and preparing our students from the TK to 12 pathway, getting them ready to be college and or career ready. Like we're bleeding at the seams and we can't seem to get a grip on turning the numbers around to get to a higher percentage. I mean, that's what we're here for, other than building up our scholars to be community ready and career ready. We just need to get a grip on that. And it's just been too long, and I don't want it to become status quo. It's, the kid, it's just not getting any higher. No, we need to flip that number around because we have brilliant scholars in our district and we have hardworking employees. But we need a superintendent who is intentional about getting each and every grade level on the right track. So we're here doing what we're supposed to be doing. Thank you.
Yes, great. Anyone else like to add anything to what was said, or any other thoughts before we move on to the next question? Okay. Seeing none here, I'd like to acknowledge that Trustee Flores has also joined us here. I want to just welcome all the trustees. And then we also have someone here from the search firm. I want to, acknowledge him too, and thank you for coming. And I want to thank everyone for coming here. And so far, this has been a great conversation. I really appreciate everyone's input. Our next question is, what qualities would make the superintendent a good leader? And that question is in the chat.
Well, I'll just lead off with something. I think it's going to take a pretty extraordinary person to navigate all of the things that need to be done and all the different pressures that are going to be put on that person. But I would say kind of patience and fortitude would be necessary. We've had kind of really high-powered folks come in, and we've had local people be promoted up, and in both cases, they haven't lasted long. And so somebody who's able to and that's not always their fault, but someone who has that fortitude and patience to really just keep pushing for the right thing for kids in the district.
They're going to need to want to have they need the want, and they need to remember why they're doing what they're doing. And to go along with the patients, they're going to need a whole lot of mental strength. And, this is going to take a toll on them because, unfortunately, of the, just all the bad stuff on social media. It's also going to need to be somebody who is very community driven, who understands our communities, who wants to be part of our communities, who encourages the trustees to get out and be part of our communities, who is going to need to be somebody who understands our students and not necessarily has to have lived experience, but a lot of empathy is going to be, wanted and needed and rightfully deserved. Especially considering the events that have happened in South Stockton over the past few weeks, we have lost some amazing young humans in some of our communities. And I think our board needs to, our superintendent is going to need to be able to just be able to empathize with what a lot of these students are going through. It's not just school, it's life.
Yeah, very well said.
Mhm. Yeah, very articulate.
Does anyone else have anything they'd like to add or
Yeah, I guess someone that can steady the ship a bit. It requires them to be able to, have the patience, the fortitude, and the mental strength that were previously mentioned. But, someone that can be a, steady voice among the noise, as well as understand that, where things are in disarray, to bring order to them. Some things might need to stop and be reevaluated. And be, take the time to actually do it the right way. While that's there, it'll be really important that they also understand some of the more urgent items facing the students, especially. Like I did mention like mental health and having safe spaces for students earlier, but these are things that need to be able to continue regardless of whatever the outside issues are. So we need someone that can be able to evaluate what needs to continue, what's really prioritize those, as well as understanding, okay, where can we stop some things and reevaluate priorities to move forward. That person has to be very organized. That person has to be very steady, and then be very patient as well.
Real quick, I have one more thing I wanted to say before I forget. It's a lot about the students, but our superintendent's going to need to be able to hold our schools' feet to the fire, as far as making our leaders at our schools accountable for things. Because I think that some of our administration at some of our schools, mostly the high schools, I think have gone rogue, and they've been allowed to go rogue, and they need to be reeled in, brought back down to reality, and they need to be reminded why they're doing what they're doing. And we're going to need a superintendent that can come in and help the board raise our trustees up, and our board and our board president to be able to make all of this happen and be able to get everybody back on the same track.
yes, thank you for that. Anyone else have any final thoughts on this? And once again, the question is, what qualities would make the superintendent a good leader?
One quality Kamari and I were discussing is like kind of being able to and wanting to know your community and the community that they're serving, especially like each school and kind of like the nuances of like the different demographics and everything. If they're going to be leading these school districts, even if they're not from that community, the willingness to learn, the willingness to get on the ground and to learn from teachers, to really listen, to learn from community members, and from teachers and their students. So just that empathy and just that connection. If they don't have it already, then that willingness to build it and to make sure that it's made in a positive way. So yeah.
Great. Appreciate that. Anyone else have anything they'd like to add?
Hi, this is Tanis Wallace from the Amelia and Adams Whole Life Center. I just wanted to piggyback off of what Omar was just saying about the willingness to be in community and to learn about that community. I think it really does come down to the commitment that this person is willing to take on. And in addition to that, I think that this person is going to have to be really innovative. I would even dare to say radical. I think that that is what Stockton Unified School District needs as a alumni of the district and a product. I do believe that someone that could hold space for knowing that our students, especially Black and Brown students, need to be pushed to academic excellence, but also holding in the balance that there needs to be a lot of care and support for those same students, but they are not without the capacity to do great work. They just need for leadership and infrastructure to be in place that really cares about young people and their development, and less about all of the politics and the red tape that goes on, and just really focus on them. And I think that that would look radical in comparison to superintendents that we have had in the recent years. So that is the qualities that I do think that a superintendent would need to have in order to be successful in Stockton Unified School District.
Yeah, makes sense. Very good input.
And one more thing. I don't think like the superintendent's going to be like a one, the one solution that's going to fix everything. And so understanding that, we can understand that we probably need to leverage more of our partnerships, especially with our community partners, to be able to help administer some of the programs that the district provides. So we want someone collaborative as well. If they're able to understand where maybe some of the deficits are and who in the community is good at providing programming to that specific area, providing support to that, being an advocate for on behalf of their students or employees, to create that programming with community partnership. That's also going to be key.
Yeah, appreciate that. Yeah, any final thoughts before the next question here? Okay, seeing none, I'll move on to the next question, which is, what would you like for the superintendent to accomplish within their first year on the job? And that question is in the chat. And I'll just say for this question, if you want to say relationships, fiscal responsibility, anything with more support for teachers, more mental health resources for students, anything along those lines.
I would like to see the superintendent work on getting more of our community-based organizations into the schools for just for anything that's new. We have so many amazing nonprofits in Stockton, and I don't think a lot of people, especially people from the outside, I don't think a lot of people know how many we have. And I think that I would like to see more interaction with like our Pride Center with the schools, and more interaction with like our public health advocates teaching healthy living and safe walking paths, you know, to schools, and more trauma-based led circle groups and cultural diversity, you know, groups. And I would like to see the superintendent work closer with our community led orgs and trying to get them back in and get our reading and math cores back in, our changes, our, you know, Teach for Americas, our, all of those. Like I said, there are so many amazing, and if you're not sure, I know a lot of them, just FYI. But yeah, I would like to see that being one of the big goals. I think we'll see a big change in our students and our families.
Great, thank you.
You know, to go along with that, you know, this new superintendent's going to have to deal with a lot of challenges, so many crises that are all happening at once. But to support what Pandora was saying, I would suggest that one of the things that I hope the superintendent would focus on would be the community schools opportunities. So with the funding that's available with this new model, to help pivot some of our schools to become community schools and integrate those nonprofits, integrate the parents and students more effectively, provide more resources for them for their lives, and make the schools the centers of community that they should be.
Yes, good input.
Can we also kind of highlight, as well as we have a lot of charter schools in the SUSD school district, and they may not necessarily be under SUSD board. I don't know how else to put this other than saying control, but I think our board and our superintendent, they still have to approve them, right? So why not work with them and why aren't we all working together? Because I think the board and that superintendent also should make sure and understand that what works for one child doesn't necessarily work for another. So whereas an SUSD Gen Pop school works great for, you know, a lot of kids, obviously, it doesn't necessarily work great for all. And those charter schools are necessary and they're needed. And, you know, to make sure that we highlight all of our schools regardless. An educational spot is an educational spot regardless of whether they're governed by the board or approved by the board. So I just wanted to highlight that.
Great. Any other input? Once again, questions in the chat. And it's what would you like for the superintendent to accomplish within their first year on the job? Okay. I will move on to the next question. The next question is, should the next superintendent have a strong background in understanding the mental health, social, emotional needs of children and system impacted youth? And that question is in the chat. And so just to provide a little clarification on that, basically what that question is getting at is really understanding where our youth are at in terms of whatever mental health or social, emotional challenges they may be having, and also understanding about if they have been impacted by being in the system of, being incarcerated or anything like that. And then how can they use that background in those areas to help them be successful as a superintendent.
Hi, this is Tanis again. I'm definitely going to agree with that statement. I think that, or well, vote yes. I think that they should have an understanding in adverse childhood experiences and trauma and how that impacts the development of a young person, their learning styles, their ability to learn. Just I think it's really, really important because it speaks to their ability to retain information and not just retain it, be able to comprehend it and use it in not only school, but in real life situations. And I think being able to understand that and have a good understanding of who those students are and what their needs are is how we could better address school and educational settings in general, because I think having a basic understanding of those things allow you to see students more in a more humane way, and allows you to have that trauma-informed lens that really brings about the innovation and thought of how we're servicing our young people and really addressing the root causes and addressing the needs that are concerning not only students, but teachers as well as their care providers.
Great. Yes, I agree.
And I'd like to.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, go for it.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I'd like to agree as well. I think like a lot of the problems, quote unquote, that are going on with Stockton Unified School District are at the root, like kind of due to the mental health of our students or lack thereof, and like the social emotional needs of them, and like the lack of the school system to really address that need, and to really actually make sure that the education system is benefiting the mental health of our students of color, of our marginalized communities. And I think the superintendent needs to have a profound understanding of that, that like the actions that they have does have a profound effect and will have a profound effect on the mental health of their students. And also that the actions of their teachers, of their on-school site officials, and in Stockton Unified School District, we have a police department within the school district. The actions of them will eventually potentially lead to a lot of their students becoming system impacted, and realizing that the policies that they have, whether or not they're choosing to connect a youth with law enforcement, when they're dealing with certain things, that's going to change that youth's life for the rest of their existence, and realizing that anytime that there's a policy that they put in place can have that effect, even if it's intentional, even if it's not, it is playing with the mental and emotional health of their students, and potentially further contributing to the already established school to prison pipeline. And like I mentioned, a lot of the problems are rooted in this, on our students not feeling safe, our students not feeling mentally healthy. So in order to address those problems, yes, the superintendent should really have a deep understanding of all of those topics.
Great. Yeah. Does anyone have any input or anything they'd like to add to that? Okay. I wanted to open it up to everyone. If you have anything that you would that's been on your mind that you wanted to bring up about what you'd like to see in the superintendent, or just anything that you would like to share now regarding the superintendent that you think that would be important to help move forward in this process.
Just one thing, like I think the continuation and normalization of like community forums like this, like that way, the community is very much used to interacting with, you know, with board trustees, with, you know, officials, and understanding, you know, how these policies affect them on their everyday life. You know, it's very much a privilege to understand what a superintendent does exactly. And to like even know how a school, like the school system works. So kind of normalizing, educating the community and making sure that these events are consistent, constant, and that our community like comes to expect them in their safe spaces, whether or not it's, you know, with their CBOs, whether or not it's with their faith communities, with their counselors, making sure that like these forums are available.
Yes, I appreciate that.
I was going to say, I to piggyback on that, I really appreciate being able to be a part of this conversation, because if you haven't noticed, I have a lot of pent up, just so much I want somebody to hear about SUSD. and I know, as being part of a low income community and stuff, we just want to be heard, and we always want to know that our kids matter to everybody. We know they matter to us. We just want them to matter to the schools. And so I think this is a great way for our community to know that y'all are listening to us, and you all are taking our thoughts and our concerns into consideration, because I knew none of my residents close to me were going to join onto this. I tried, but I knew that they were going to make me be their voice. So I had to poll them to figure out everything they wanted to know. But more of this would just be a great opportunity to feel like we're actually a part of everything and that we're all being heard. It's an amazing thing, and I really appreciate you guys for doing this for us.
Thank you. Yes, and that's exactly the goal of this, is to really listen to the community and get their voice involved in the process as much as possible. And we really appreciate, you know, you talking to the residents and polling them and, you know, being their voice here. That's really something special for us all. Does anyone have any other thoughts? I do have one final question and then we can wrap up, but does anyone want to add anything?
Yeah, I really like Pandora's point. And actually Omar's, one of Omar's quotes about like knowing about what's going on and understanding the roles of a superintendent is a privilege. You know, I think one of the reasons why we're, you know, we still have to, it's been a challenge bringing out folks to some of these, like, I think I see subcommittees in the chat, you know, maybe more of these listening sessions, is that the community, while they're aware of the issues that are directly affecting them, a lot of the processes that promote those situations or those issues are, again, opaque and hidden in terminology and this and that, acronyms that make the process much more confusing. And so people don't feel empowered to come into these spaces and speak. So I think in addition to having these listening sessions, there should be a more concerted effort to translate a lot of the issues, processes that the district is undergoing, translating that in terms that community understands, and doing so in multiple facets, multiple avenues, different languages, in order to make sure that people can respond to them. So, it's one thing to have listening sessions, it's one thing to host, one here, one there. But if the community doesn't feel empowered, they don't feel like they're going to be heard in those spaces because maybe they don't have knowledge of all the acronyms that are associated here, particularly for our youth, then they won't attend. So there should be more concerted effort. And I know our CBOs are actively doing that. So that's, again, going back to leveraging those partnerships. That's really important.
So I know I'm here just to listen, but as a board member, I do just want to lift up the fact that, as I think Trustee Flores is on, Trustee Colon is on, Trustee Danair is not here, but we ran campaigns really about creating opportunities for stakeholders to be engaged in education. Our subcommittees are 100% a great way for you all to have like these deep and rich conversations around what's happening with education. I did drop the link in to the chat. The subcommittees are really where the real work happens. Come out, dig in with us. There's a bunch of subcommittees happening at a lot of different times, but there's some great work, some great conversations happening about how do we really move not just the district forward, but how do we do that work to move our city forward, right? Because education is really around moving us all forward. So come out to the subcommittees. I think one thing won't hit it on the head, and I think Charles might be the one who stated that previously, but we have to do multiple things in order to get our communities engaged, not just coming to the board meetings, not just the listening sessions, but us also building relationships. And I would like to make this like a standard event for the community where we can come in and just have conversations, learning conversations together, because we're a learning community, right? And I think this is kind of the work that happens. We can couple this with board meetings, with study sessions, with subcommittees, but I think we have to do it all in order to bring our community to the table. So come out to the meetings. We would love to come to your meetings as well. Just let us know, how do we meet in the middle to make it happen for our students and staff.
Yes. Thank you. Yeah, I really appreciate that subcommittees too, because you're right. That's where a lot of the work gets done. Does anyone have any other comments or anything they'd like to add? Okay, I'll just have one wrap-up question here, and then we'll close here. And just to kind of bring everything together, what do you think makes our community unique? I put that in the chat.
Our diversity, I think, and this is coming, I come from like hippie Granolaville, USA up in Oregon. So I say that with all the love in the world, I promise. I was born an Oregonian, but I've been here for 10 years, 11 years, something like that. How old's my daughter? I've been here 11 years. And when I got off the Greyhound in Stockton, I knew it was home immediately. And the diversity that is here, and just, this is the biggest, littlest town I have ever seen in my life. Everybody seems to know everybody, but yet no one knows anybody. Everybody seems to be related somehow, some way, and it's just, it's amazing, and it's lovey, and I love it. And I keep telling my husband, don't ever think we're going back to the Northwest, because I'm not. I will die in this heat, but this is where I belong. And we're just all so unique, and we embrace our uniqueness, you know, and I like that.
Yeah. I think Stockton was even at one point was the most diverse city in America at one point. I think it may still be, but just wanted to go on that. Anyone else like to add about to the question about what makes our community unique? And that could be, you know, particularly South Stockton, any of our teacher needs, our students' needs, our administrators' needs, or just anything about the beauty of our city.
And I'm just gonna champion what our youth protector Kamari said. I asked him the question, and he said the youth is what, you know, makes our community unique. And he said just kind of very similar to what Pandora said, like the difference in that, and the willingness to be different, and to want to change as well. Like Kamari actually said, you know, with being different comes change. So I thought that was really powerful. And I think it's really true. Like me not being from Stockton, I'm actually from Antigua, a little bit down the road. But like that's one thing that I can see, you know, working directly with, you know, the 20 youth protectors that I work with. Like it's just how creative and how resilient each one of them is, and also how willing they are to dream and to be different and to want to change their community. Like every biweekly meeting, like I ask them little questions like, how do you want to change your community? Like what do you want to do in Stockton? They all have like really grand ideas, really great ideas that I could have never come up with, you know. Like, and I think that's wonderful. I think that's beautiful, and I just would like to highlight that from Kamari. And he also shows me that every time I hang out with him, every time he comes to these meetings with me. So I really appreciate that about him. And yeah, so.
That is wonderful. That's cool. All right. Anybody have anything else they'd like to add? Okay, so we'll go ahead and wrap up. I'll get into the next steps we have here is going to summarize the responses. We're recording this and we'll summarize that, and we can make that available for the Board of Trustees and also for the search firm as well. And as promised, we do have a raffle, and that will be randomized by emails, and you can either pick that up at our RSSC office in downtown Stockton, or we can either mail that to you. So we will follow up with you on that via email. And Charles, is there anything I'm missing with the raffle, or did I cover everything there?
Yeah, you covered most of it. You just have to make sure that your email has already been registered with on Zoom. So if you entered through here, I'm assuming most of us that are here filled out a form. I can drop the link here one more time in case you haven't. But in order for us to randomize, create a random order for this, we will just need your email. So I'll just drop it in the chat right now.
Okay, thank you, Charles. And it's going to be a gift card, and that will be the okay. Yeah, so that will be a gift card, and so we will be following up with you on that. And does anyone have any closing thoughts or anything else they would like to add?
Just want to thank you very much, Ben, for sponsoring this. It is helpful. We're right on the cusp of doing interviews, and I know these will remind us of a lot of the things the community's been saying in our own processes. But thank everybody for participating for us.
And thank you for coming too. Appreciate each and every one of you for coming and providing your input. And even if you just listened, just appreciate you just coming just to listen. So it's everyone's input was definitely valuable, regardless of the level of participation. So thank you. I hope
Thank you.
everyone has a great day. Oh, I'm sorry. What was
you.
someone saying? Okay.
This is President Flores. I just want to say thank you also, Ben, for hosting the event. Very much appreciated. And I echo everything VP said. Get to those committee meetings. It's work together.
Okay, great. Have a wonderful day, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay, all right.